Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. I hope that all of you are doing well. So, our today's topic is about learning how can we make decisions using the pseudocode. As we have learned earlier, that pseudocode is basically like a fake code that we write just to kind of plot a solution how the program would work. So, when we are writing the pseudocode, there I have already explained you there are not a lot of hard and fast rules, not very hard and fast rules. There are some leniencies available, but we need to be just remaining inside the guidelines. There are few practices that we need to do, and we must do that. And then there are like a lot of flexible options available for us that we can pick and choose from. So once we start this lesson, I would want to recap what we did in the previous lesson, and then obviously we are going to build upon that and study how can we make decisions with the help of pseudocode. So decision making is something that is always happening in all sorts of programs, all sorts of games that you play, all sorts of, let's say, programs that you interact with, like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. So decisions are being made all over our interactions. Whenever we try to use those apps, there are decisions that are supposed to be made. All our actions that we take on that particular, let's say, forum. For example, if you're using Instagram and you pressed the heart button, it is supposed to give a like to that particular post that you have pressed the heart button for. So, keeping this in mind, so what happens is that when you press that button, so Instagram tries to see what you have done. It registers your action and decides what it should do when you have pressed that particular button, and it makes a decision and make changes into the how you are interacting with the program. So keeping this in mind, we will move further from this slide. Was you learned about only three sort of symbols and keywords. One of them was input. Input basically allowed you to enter marks. If you look carefully over here, so this was input. That is how we used to write input, and there was a method that how you would write input and explain what do you want to input. For example, input marks. If you write this statement input marks, what it will do is it will use this variable marks and allow the user to take value for the variable mentioned in front of it. So this will allow the user to enter a value that will be stored in the variable marks. So what happens next after you have taken an input? You would sometime at some instance want to display what value is stored in that particular variable or what value had you entered in that variable. So for that we used output. The syntax of output is very similar, but it has two options for us. First option is that we can display a stored value which was stored in a variable on screen. So this marks this value was entered by us and stored in that particular variable. So if we write it like that, output and then write the name of the variable, it will display what is stored in that variable. इस वेरिएबल में जो वैल्यू स्टोर्ड है ये उसको स्क्रीन पर डिस्प्ले करवाने के लिए यूज किया जाएगा. एंड ऑल्सो सम ऑफ द टाइम्स इट इज नॉट नेसेसरी कि हमने हर दफा कोई स्टोर्ड वैल्यू ही आउटपुट करवानी. देयर कैन बी अ पॉसिबिलिटी दैट वी वुड वांट टू आउटपुट a message on the screen, like you want to output marks, but before that you want to write a message that the student marks are. So this becomes a message. So for the messages that you want to show on screen, whatever comes on screen, which is like support or everything like that, so you can use these double quote marks also. See the double quotes, these are the double quotes. So if you want some message that you want to be displayed on screen exactly as it is, for example, I have used this hello Umar. So if I use this, this will show this thing exactly like that on screen. Hello Umar. So whatever is written inside these double quote marks, it is going to be displayed as it is written. Okay, so this becomes a message. Instead of a value, you are using a message in this case. And then you also learned about this sort of a arrow symbol. This arrow symbol is basically called an assignment operator. We call it an assignment. Assignment means that it is going to assign a value to a variable. So what it does is you have two sides of this assignment. There is a left side and then there is a right side. So on the right side, what you do is you write the value that you want to store. In the left side, you write the variable in which you want the value to be stored. So in this scenario, what will happen is 54 will be assigned to the variable marks. Or you can say that value 54 will be stored in the variable marks. Right? Also, and the next step also exactly, it is not only that you can only use values to be stored in the variables, you can also make calculations on those values. Like I have tried to calculate percentage over here. So you can calculate these values, you can calculate a new number, you can calculate a new something, and then store it on the variable on the right side. So in this example, what is happening is the value of marks divided by 75 and then multiplied by 100. So whatever the value comes out after this calculation is carried out, once this calculation is completed, it will be stored in this variable of percentage, right? So this is a recap of the previous lesson, that what symbols did you learn. Also, I have listed an example so that it becomes more clear to us. If you look at this example, this is a pseudocode for a program that takes two values from the user and outputs the total. So if you look at, there are two possible solutions for this. First one is simple, that you take a number from the user. So you ask the user to input number 1 and then you ask the user to input num2 again. So the user can enter one value here and one value here. And what you do is you are going to output both of the values added together, num1 plus num2. So whatever the answer is, it will output the total for that. Also, there is another alternative solution for that, in which you do not output num1 plus num2, but what you do is you take num1, you take num2 from the user, you bring out a variable called total, and you store the value of num1 plus num2 in the variable total, and then you output total over here. So there is a small glitch over here. It should have been output total. All right. Moving ahead. So today's lesson is mostly about making decisions. So when we want to make decisions, there are three types of things that we can use. First one is if, then, and if, and I have written an example code for that. So you entered some value in the marks variable. What it does now is it checks that if marks are greater than 50. That is how you write it. You write if, the first keyword, then you write the name of the variable associated with it that you want to check, and then you write the value, that what is the condition that you want to check. So you want to check if marks are greater than 50. If they are, if marks are greater than, what happens then? So then is the keyword that explains what will happen if this condition becomes true. That is, if marks are actually greater than 50, what should happen in that case? So we are going to output pass if we enter marks and these marks are more than 50. So we will output that the student has passed or something like that. And every time you use an if statement, you are supposed to close that if statement also. So that is why when I use if marks greater than 50, I also close it with an end if statement. All right. So this is the explanation of how the if, then, and if works. We'll apply these concepts in a scenario based question that I have mentioned ahead. On the other side, there is also an option. What happens when someone does not score marks which are more than 50? What do you show on screen? So for that scenario, what we use is we use another, you can say, alteration of this if then and if, and this alteration is called if then else. If then else and if. So what happens in this scenario is that you check it for the same condition. If marks were more than 50, you are supposed to output pass. That is what we have already learned. But what in case the marks are not more than 50? They are somewhere lesser than 50. So obviously, if someone scoring more than 50 makes them pass the exam, if someone does not score more than 50, it means that they have scored less than 50. So in that scenario, we will just not have to write the condition here again, because everything that is not more than 50 is supposed to be less than 50. So this works in that way. So you go for an if condition, you write after then what happens if this condition is true. If someone scored more than 50, will output pass. But what if they don't score more than 50? Everything that happens, that comes under the else option. Else option tells you that we will output fail. If someone scores more than 50, we'll output pass. Otherwise, else we are going to output fail. So this also is very useful when making decisions where an input is involved, where you can only take two decisions about it. I will give you an example of it on the next page also. And also there is a possibility that on based of your marks, you might have to make more than one decisions. You have to make more than one selections. For example, we get our grades based on our marks. So if someone scores marks which are more than 90, we give them an A plus or A star. If someone scores marks that are less than 90 but are more than 80, so which means that they are between 80 and 89, so we are supposed to output an A grade for them or give them an A grade. If someone scores between 70 and 79, we give them a B grade. If someone scores 60 and 69 between, so we give them a C grade. If someone scores, let's say, between 50 and 59, we give them a D grade. And if someone scores below 50, we give them an F grade. So if you see, if you look over here, now you have got many options that you would want to pick up from, and you only have to select one out of all of them. So in that scenario, when you have got a lot of options that you want to do, a lot of decisions that you make, you can use a case statement. A case statement allows you to give more conditions, more than one conditions. So you can do more than one, more than two, more than three things based on what input was given. So your decision becomes more diverse and they become more, you can say, comprehensive. They become more explanatory. You can now further explain what happens if this was done, if this was done, if this was done, what would happen? What if their marks are at a certain number? So you clearly can decide what grade they have got. So this basically helps you with that. This case makes things very simple for you when it comes to making a lot of decisions based on one value. Now we go further towards the examples. A first example is related to if then only. It does not include else, it only includes if then. So see, I have asked the user to write a pseudocode for a program that allows the user to enter a temperature. So you will be asked to enter a temperature and output hotter than usual if the temperature is more than 40. If a temperature entered and that temperature is greater than 40, so we can say that it is hotter than usual. So how do we deal with it? In order to deal with it, we have to look at the solution. The solution here starts with someone inputting a temperature. So once that temperature has been input, we get to check if the temperature is more than 40. If it is, if temperature is more than 40, you are going to write output hotter than usual. You are going to display hotter than usual on your screen. So this basically solves that problem for you, right? So simple. You entered a temperature, you checked if that temperature is more than 40, and you written or shown on screen that it is hotter than usual. But we can also make it more diverse. That takes us to our example. Example 2 gives you two options that if your temperature is more than 40, you will write hotter than usual, and if temperature is less than 40, so I just made a mistake over here, it should be less than 40. So if your temperature is less than 40, so you will have to go for colder than usual. So let's say that this is an area we're talking about where the general temperature is 40 or something like that. So if you enter a value which is more than 40, it is going to say hotter than usual. If you enter a value which is less than 40, it is going to say colder than usual. So obviously these scenarios are our own created, so there can be possibility of errors in that also. But keeping that in mind that we are only learning about how to implement the code, implement the pseudocode, so that is very much relevant to us. So what happens is that you allow the user to input a temperature. If someone enters a temperature which is more than 40, this practice is going to come in use. Output hotter than usual. Someone enters a temperature. That temperature is 40 and above, more than 40. So you will get this message on the screen which is hotter than usual. If someone enters a temperature which is not greater than 40, let's say it is 38, 39, 37, 20, 15, anything. So in that case, a different message will go on screen that will be what is written under the else statement. See, this is the else statements which says that what to do in case this condition is not true. Entered marks were not more than 40, then you will follow what is written under the else condition. So else allows you to output something that will be possible in case that this value or this condition was not achieved. So you entered a temperature, it is not more than 40, then this message is going to go on to your screens which says colder than usual. Alright, so we now move towards our, that is example 3, and this example is more interesting than the first two examples. Now you get more options. You allow the user to enter the temperature, fine, perfect. And if the temperature is more than 45, you can say it is extremely high. If the enter temperature is between 35 and 44, you can output high. If the temperature is between 20 and 34, we can say that it's a moderate temperature, bearable. And if someone enters a temperature, or if the received temperature is less than 20, maybe between 7 and 19, we can say that it is cold. Obviously, it is going to be a little bit cold. It's going to be feeling a little bit cold if the temperature is between 7 and 19. And if the temperature entered is even below 7, you are going to display a message extremely cold on your screen. So again, to display the message, we use the word output. If we are writing a message, if we are showing a message, the message should be in the double quotes. So this is what the practice would be. Again, you will enter temperature using the input temperature command, and after that you will use this case block. See, this is the case end case. This is the whole block. This block will check the case of temperature. You have entered the temperature. What is the temperature like? So it will check. If the temperature is above 45, you will write extremely high on your screens. You will get this message. If the temperature entered is between 35 and 44, you are going to get an output showing that the temperature is high. If you enter a temperature which is between 20 and 34, this will show a message that the temperature is moderate. If you enter a temperature which is between 7 and 19, it will display a message cold on your screen. If you enter a enter the temperature and it is below 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, negative values, anything, it is going to display a message that it is extremely cold. So this is how the case is going to work. And obviously, when you have started the case statement, you would have to end the case statement also. So every statement that you use, every structure that you use like that, like if structure or case structure, you start them, you have to end them with an ending statement. If you were using the if statement as in the previous slide, you would end it with end if. So if started, and then you said that end if, that if has ended. Again in this slide, you started with case, and you will say that the case has ended. End case over here. So this is just a quick bite lesson from our pseudocode series. I hope that you guys will understand that. I will assign you some of the questions also that you can do on your own. Just one question for if then, one question for if then else, and one question for the case code. So I hope that you will understand. I hope that you have understood how this thing is going to be going to be used. And I would really appreciate if you guys could send me your homeworks. You can do it on your copies. You have your ICT copies with you. So what you can do is I will give you the problems, the three problems, one about if, one about if then, one about the usage of if, sorry, one about the usage of case and end case. So you need to decide which one you want to use for if, which one you want to use for if then else, which one you want to use for case. And you can obviously write down the solutions on your copies and send it back to me. I'll check them and I'll let you know that how you have done. Thank you so much for today's session. I'll inshallah talk to you again, hopefully in the next week in school. And if that is not possible, we'll have another online session. Thank you so much for today's class. Take care.